Okay, well, good evening, everyone. It is 6 p.m. and I call this regular city council meeting of April 21st to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Carey?
Here.
Councilmember Thomas?
Here.
Councilmember Grant?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Clark?
He will be absent until the executive session.
Councilmember Edwards?
Here.
Councilmember Dole?
Here.
Mayor Creed?
Here. All right, if everyone would please join me for the optional Pledge of Allegiance or a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Let's move on to approval of the agenda. I have no changes.
Everest moves to approve the agenda.
Thomas seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Which?
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, we will move on now to public comments for items not on the agenda. Is there anyone in council chambers who would like to give public comment for an item not on the agenda? Steve, please come on up.
Okay. Steve Presnash, 131 East Third Street. I would continue to maintain my objections to Mr. Edwards and being on county P&Z because there's an appearance of impropriety there. Especially since it seems that he champions development of properties when there's a questionable, such as the parking lot on West 6th Street there. And that's making him a facilitator, and that might be benefiting him personally. And also, I would continue to maintain my objection for Mr. Labbe being on the P&Z because of the area of propriety that clouds him over the $800,000 sale of the mining museum property. There's two police matters I would like to see some enforcement on. Again, I've brought this up in the past. I would like to see the front license plate being required because it's required by state statute. And also, there's a practical reason for that. It would help track down lost children, things like that, where a video would not be able to pick it up if people, if it's only where they pull into a place where it's only a forward-looking video and they don't get to see the back of the vehicle. And also license plates on the rear that have a plastic cover that masks the license plate to where you can't read it. There's several of them in town I've noticed. And also anytime someone has puts a bike rack or something on the back of their car, they should have another mounting of the license plate to make it readily readable, because you can't read it through the bicycle rack or the bicycle on it. So I'd like to see some enforcement on those issues. And also, sometime in the past, we had a spate of people breaking bottles and glass on Harrison Avenue, and I'm beginning to see that pattern emerge again. There was some kind of a bottle shattered down by the Wild Bill's, just north of it on the sidewalk, about 2 months ago. And recently, within the last week, a bottle's been shattered just north of the Tabor Opera House there on the sidewalk. I imagine it's usually one individual doing that. So I would like to see maybe some kind of enhanced fines for that kind of thing to think about when we catch that person, to dissuade other people from doing it. Thank you kindly.
Thank you very much, Steve. Is there anyone else in council chambers who would like to give public comment on items not on the agenda? Looking at you two. No? Okay. Is there anyone online who would like to give public comment for items not on the agenda? Please raise your virtual hand. Seeing none, let's move on. We have the consent agenda, which includes approval of the minutes of our last meeting on April 7th, as well as the temporary use permit for the Leadville Pride and Wellness Festival.
Edwards moves to approve the consent agenda. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Chairman? Okay. All right.
Mayor, if I may, is anyone who was in attendance in chambers or online for the temporary use permit by that motion?
Oh, right.
By this motion of council, this action be approved, so I don't feel like you need to stay for the rest of the meeting if you were here just for the temporary use permit.
Appreciate anybody who's present for that, just in case we had questions. This is a known festival for us and very welcome. All right, let's move on to presentations. We are going to receive a presentation from Department of Local Affairs, or DOLA. I want to introduce you to Randy Sneed. Randy is the South Central Regional Manager of DOLA. The South Central region includes Lake County, and I've personally found Randy to be exceptionally helpful in guiding me to programs or options that may help with whatever issue I'm trying to solve. And I'd also like to point out the city has greatly benefited from her guidance and help. We are so deeply thankful for the local capacity building grant that will help enable our community development and planning department to add a staff member to assist with our affordable housing endeavors. And additionally, for the grant for the community center for planning and development of that future asset. So thank you so much. Your support assistant.
For the intro.
I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, hi folks. I will just start by introducing myself. I worked for my hometown, the city of Creed. They just call it City of Creed. It's really a statutory town, but doesn't roll off the tongue as well. So they insisted on changing the name to the City of Creed, a Colorado town, just to be extra super obnoxious, especially for the clerk. I was the city clerk there. I joined the Department of Local Affairs in 2018. And a few 4-ish years ago, stepped into Christy Dune's old role. If you knew my predecessor, she's now the city administrator of Salida. Mayor Green wanted me to touch on some things about the Department of Local Affairs, particularly what resources we historically offer. We offer right now in times of the budget hell that we're going through at the state, and how we're kind of structured. So the department is kind of cool. Colorado's lucky to have it. There's a handful of similar departments across the United States, but not very many, and none is specific to local government as we have. So I think we started in '63, and it was before the professional manager was really much of a part of most local governments. It kind of started out as like a range writer type of management assistant and grew into what it is today. So we have 8 regions. There's 8 of me in the state. Mine is South Central, which is the best and prettiest. You guys are as far north as I go. I go all the way out to Canyon City, and I cover the 6 counties of the San Luis Valley. So my side of the house is local government. We are kind of the second. Local government and housing is the biggest divisions of Department of Local Affairs, and housing has definitely increased quite a bit in the last few years. So it is popular as housing has been with this administration, in addition to kind of a lot of COVID dollars going to rental assistance, homelessness programs that we have. So that kind of blew that up. But we also have a small executive director's office. Our executive director is a member of the governor's cabinet. We also do property tax, which that department's had a lot of adventures in the last few years because the legislature insists on changing the rules every 5 minutes. So they stay really busy trying to just determine how our counties and munis and special districts should even be trying to calculate what they have going on. And then assessment appeals, which is when a property owner challenges like the county and does an appeal, it goes, we house that. So specific to the Division of Local Government, DOLA's mission is to strengthen Colorado communities. So we try to do a lot of things with that. So around our core mission, we've always done technical assistance like this. We also can do a range of things for a local government, just depending on where they're at. We've been involved in, new community incorporation or, stepping in as a mediator when there's kind of issues between like special districts and municipalities and that sort of thing. We can do training specific to ethics, all sorts of whatever concerns that you have. We can help out with hiring. I've been doing a lot of strategic kind of goal setting workshops. Like for example, with Lake County, with a new administrator and 3 new commissioners, there was kind of some training and then some goal setting and just a lot of sort of intensive work because of that. We just try to step in and help and meet communities where they're at. And then we have resources. Those resources can look different year to year. Our bread and butter for funding communities is the Energy Impact Assistance Fund. That money comes from mostly oil and gas extraction, but definitely from other resources. There's a score of 0 to 10 in the state, and Lake County is a 10. So that means that you either have a lot of folks that work in that industry, and you contribute to severance tax and federal mineral lease tax revenues a lot, and that kind of makes us more competitive here than in most of the rest of my region and a lot of the state. When we're going for those grants, it's 10% of the competitiveness score. So that funding has been a bit in jeopardy. It's in the statute as sort of belonging to local governments, and the state is meant to be a steward. And the understanding of that, the nature of that funding has kind of changed or gotten a bit lost. So the legislature has become more comfortable using that money to balance the budget in the last couple of years, which is frustrating as a deeply local government oriented person, but they don't listen to me. They don't call me before they make decisions. We're hoping for better news. Last year, we also got hit with something called the ad valorem tax, which is like a big proprietary refund to oil and gas companies that we can't really control or predict. And we also got hit with majorly low revenues after a really fun few years of kind of, being able to hand out about 90 million a year. Our norm is like 60 million a year with 3 cycles, and that helps us kind of meet communities where they're at in their projects and make sure that they're ready, not coming in too early. So we're hoping to get back to some version of normal of that. We just went through a big funding round, not a big one, that was horribly competitive. Because of that, we had $15 million and we're asked for 55. So a lot of those like water and sewer compliance projects, like Mountain View Villages was in this round. So it's gotten a little hairy. We're hoping for another round next fall. We have some other kind of normal, we handle CDBG, Community Development Block Grant Funds. Normally we handle the Rural Economic Development Initiative, which is anything that you guys are doing to create jobs or keep jobs in your community. We can talk about a project for that. Those are once a year, a little bit less money, but still really important for our communities. And then we are sort of practiced enough at getting money to our communities quickly and efficiently and following the rules that kind of anytime the legislature comes up with something, a one-off, like Strong Communities, that was used a lot here in town, the Strong Communities. We're generally the ones that are assigned with the task of making up the legislation into a real thing that can be applied. So that's also us. We also have a lot of huge brains at headquarters. I'm not one of them, but I can tap them. We've got some brilliant people around finances, taxes, community development, comp planning. So always give me a call. Many times I won't know, but I can always definitely find So that's us. So this is one of the trainings that we like to do. I think it's just kind of best practice to do this after any change in your board. It's a good refresher, good intro. I'll kind of go through it because I know that you all have gotten a little bit more experience than when I planned on coming here a couple months ago. But just, so I'll zoom through and just stop me if you have any questions, but. So your grounding authority, the right and responsibility of government to establish laws and ordinances to preserve public order and tranquility, I really like that. So it's public health, safety, and general welfare. So the local government is really the building blocks of like, what do we actually need first in the community to be functional and safe? So health and safety, you guys have a lot of these. Leadville Lake is kind of one of my wilder communities as far as how services are broken up and how many special districts there are. It's just sort of interesting how it was put together. So I know you guys have a little bit of parks, right?
Well, some very tiny.
Right.
Not
And you guys
recreational
do,
parks, more just small plots.
You do police.
Yes.
And then housekeeping, I mean, that's usually generally a, mostly a county role, but sort of safer though at the same time to extend the permanent records and those sort of things that you have. So for you guys, your main role as electeds is to set policy. You are, you have to answer for the budget, responsible for it ultimately at the end of the day. Your enabling authority that mostly comes from the statutes. There's this long list, like especially in land use codes of what local governments are allowed to do. So you have sort of a right and a responsibility to use it to protect the public interest. Hire staff and appoint boards, usually just a manager, and then they're in turn responsible for hiring the rest of staff, depending on your structure that will further your mission. General direction and ongoing two-way communication. We're going to talk a lot more about that. But probably the most important part of the council manager system of government is really good flow up and down and through, especially around everyone understanding the mission, everyone understanding their roles, everyone getting information at the same time. Like a healthy flow of information is really critical to organizational health and the support staff. Of course, be professional, be accountable, be ethical. We'll get into some of the ethics stuff a little later, but there's a lot of resources in the state. We've got a great ethics commission. It's really good to have a strong understanding about what you're, as an elected official, about what you're required to do by law, ethically. If you guys would like to take it further into like an ethics code that steps beyond what the requirements are in the law, that's a good conversation to have as a group. I make this one as small as possible for some reason. So as opposed to the board, manager and team is going to prepare the budget. So they're really in charge of making sure that you know and have enough information to approve the budget that you're responsible for. Mostly the person that recruits, hires, and terminates and supervises staff. Your manager needs to be your advisor. So this is the person that, this is another big part of that board staff communication, is making sure that you have the sort of policy research that you need to make a decision, and that is flowing well, and that you, it's also important that you are responsible with that, so that if you don't feel like you do have enough information, that you're communicating that very clearly, that you're not afraid to table items. If you're, don't feel that you have enough information to vote on them, to an extent that it doesn't like cease functioning of the board. But important to be able to talk about that. Objectivity about local operations is a big role of the manager. You guys have your different sets of constituents that you represent. The manager is here to give you unbiased information about all of your decisions and all of the information that they can. Traditionally, an exempt employee makes policy recommendations is part of that role, which it's a difficult job, and that's why it's lead on your staff side to be able to provide objective information, but also be able to say, you know, in the manager's office opinion, this is probably our best bet here. We give other options. So, what else? Bound by whatever action the town takes. The control is always in the hands of the elected representatives of the citizens of Leadville. So always bound to you, but keeping these roles really separate and really clear is really important to functionality, really important for risk management, ensuring things are running smooth. So you're accountable to citizens, they're accountable to you. You appoint a manager, they appoint everybody else. You're responsible for legal compliance. Again, you have to answer when things go haywire, but really you depend on your manager to make sure that you are compliant. Legislation and policy is a really good way to think, to just keep in your mind. It's in a small town, it's really hard to that line gets pretty gray between like what is admin, what is kind of stepping into more of a management thing, what is over involvement in a certain department, or think of yourselves as the legislative part of this government. The board is in charge of managing these meetings. It seems like your chair does a really excellent job of that. Your manager, and this can look a little different. This can have maybe mayor involvement or board or one board member involvement, something like that. The information and agenda management is a really critical piece too. If you guys sit down once a year and do strategic planning, and you've got some goal out there that can't really happen, but it's super important to you, but you have to talk about it in 6 months, just making sure it's on that agenda is a really important part of functionality and actually accomplishing what you're wanting to do. So that's an important thing to look at, make sure you're doing it right. How are items added to your agenda? Does it retract from doing the things that you most want to do? So there's good policy around that if there's issues there. So the rest of your staff is tech expertise, providing information, definitely helping the manager's office for whatever background policy advice that you guys need to make decisions. And again, that good communication. Your citizens' role is to participate, their role and responsibility is to participate fully, advise appointed elected officials. Advise is a really lofty word to use for what happens in the grocery store and you just want to get some cereal and go home. But still, it's their role and their responsibility and their right. Asking questions and offering input and solutions. That just happens. Some good solutions from a citizen. Great. So as far as working together as a board, I've seen some very good boards, and I'm often called when that's not happening, kind of bureaucratic marriage counselors. But this group of people is meant to have differing opinions, and it's really important for just the functioning of democracy that you do when you voice those and you're able to work together to get through that. But we can go over some things that help with that. So who the heck are you? I do think that if it's not strategic planning, that a conversation that steps away from the day-to-day agenda items getting done is really important. As a group, I think having that conversation around, yeah, we all have differing like kind of pet projects and things that are important to us, but where do we have the most consensus? And how do we work together to make sure those top things get achieved? I got to go on a tour with the Southern Youth Tribe with some of their elders talking about what changed as far as their prosperity goes. And I think 30 or 40 years ago, they kind of sat down and had that like, okay, we've got to figure out what is most important here. And, you know, the rest has to wait. And so what was most important to them was, so their North Star was prosperity and well-being of their tribal members. And sort of that became, how do we get there? And that was like everything else, money solves all problems. So how do we take what we have and diversify it and make it into what can really serve to make sure our tribe is prosperous? So they kind of went and did that, sit down, what's our North Star? We have to focus on it. And what the result of that this many years later is like a beautiful rec center with a giant pool and free Montessori daycare and, you know, all these wonderful things that they've really been able to accomplish from kind of zeroing in on that conversation. So I think important to do that, you know, once a year, just to reorient yourselves and to figure out where you have commonality. So I think you just did this recently. You have your 26-27 strategic plan and you have a great mission statement from there. I kind of love these. They're a little bit like semantics and it feels like a nerdy thing to do. But I have to talk to myself about DOLA's mission every day when things get hard. It's so important, like I think, to orient your entire team to that mission and knowing that even if today sucks, like what I'm doing really matters for me and the people in my community. So great work on that. You guys have these are really cool, the commitment to accountability section of that. Again, that staff board partnership is the most kind of mission critical thing for the success of Leadville. So some obstacles to that, all board members may not see themselves as the members of the same team. I don't know if you guys had CIRSA train and if you've done the training, but they call it the kind of the outlier. That can be like a person specifically acting sort of against the group and being problematic, but this can really also be kind of, it's a weird dynamic with 7 people. And kind of if one person is there for a, you know, a certain, not necessarily like a pet thing or a special interest thing, but are there from like maybe a slightly different constituency than the norm, and have a hard time, they can sort of start to feel isolated when they're the only one having an issue. And it's really easy to just sort of, you have 6 votes or you have 5 votes out of 6 and moving on. So really important to notice when that's happening, when someone is feeling kind of left out of a decision or not part of the group on a decision, because they represent a group of folks that are going to feel the same way about that decision. So important to get through that and be able to communicate through that, even if the outcome is the same, right? Difficulty moving on after a close vote or a contentious issue. I can't stand this, and I will call people out. This is a terrible thing to do for an organization, is to, your responsibility is to go to that tough meeting, speak your mind, and no matter which way it goes, that's the decision of the board that I am on, and we have to move on. Going to go say, well, they made the wrong decision, but I didn't vote for it, is really harmful to an organization, and it's really harmful to for your optics in the community, and it's really harmful for functioning well as a board after that, because you're kind of saying, I don't support that. And you don't have to support it, but you're still a part of this team that has to function. And then board and staff don't necessarily always speak the same language. You have different bosses. You are volunteer for the most part, or get a measly stipend that we've so appreciate your service. Boards have no hierarchy, which can be great, and it can be tricky. There's not a lot of measurable feedback on a board, which is kind of tough. And then your open meetings requirement sometimes gets in the way of maybe frank conversation and being able to be on as you would like sometimes. Whereas your staff has, hopefully this doesn't happen much, but they can start to feel like they have multiple bosses. And that can be difficult. It's really important, particularly in your manager, the role of your manager, to be speaking with one voice as much as possible and having consensus with direction on items. And that kind of means, that does kind of mean limiting your direction and supervision to public meetings. Changing agendas can throw your staff for a loop, limited resources, and again, that mixed message. Yeah. I think these are all kind of obvious, but I'll just remember that you, to some extent, we all deserve our private life. So when you step into public office, to some extent, you're always representing Leadville. Oh, this guy was a great public administration professor from whatever program it was in Kansas. Building this muscle means that if there's an issue that you guys kind of seek help, look for ways to get through it, especially if something keeps coming up. This is usually solvable, and there's personality conflicts, but I think as human beings that are selfless enough to take this role, that you can kind of get past that, because what starts to happen is we start to spend all of our time on this one issue and not doing those North Star issues hardly at all, or at like 11:30 when everyone's brain is fried and we're all real ready to go home. So talk about those things when they happen, and ask for help if they're becoming a problem with your functionality. Willingness to address difficult issues is really important. I have a lot of boards that are a little too polite and let things fester that harm their community. So it's important to work together as a team, but it is also important to be that protector of your community and make difficult decisions when they come up. And a successful relationship with professional staff is very important for an effective board. So your manager is there to help you do what you want to do and make you look good while you're doing it. And again, make sure you're providing clear direction and messaging to that person to help implement your collective policy direction. Goals and setting priorities. I think that we have to some extent talked about establishing what your North Star is, or what your North Stars are. Something that has gotten a lot more important in the last year is talking through, so as a government, what are our core services? What are we absolutely required to do? What compliance stuff exists out there? And this is a time of kind of austerity, I think, that we are not done with yet. That's been really difficult for us because we're used to sort of wearing white hats and having the resources to write and help with things. But what I'm really telling my communities to do is have that conversation. What do we have to do by law? What is most important to our citizens for us to do, like police protection, for example, and going from there. I think that we're all getting tight. I know that smaller communities get hit up with a lot of requests from great organizations in the community that are providing really critical services. And as federal and state grants start to dry up, I think you are going to be hit a lot more with those kind of requests. So right now it's important to have that conversation of what you can do, what you're willing to do, what you're able to do, as far as how you spend taxpayer revenue, taxpayer resources. Yeah, you all just did strategic planning, so you know this. But I think it's absolutely mission critical for your staff to know what your goals are. You've already done this. You got it. We're skipping this. You all are a little bit more experienced, so I don't think that you need this. Have you had any issues around open meetings, figuring out what's what for public hearings, executive sessions?
No, I think we're pretty first on that.
You already know this, read your packets. Prior to the meeting also. Packets are a pain in the butt to put together. And your role is to make sure that you have got it read beforehand. So we can move on from that. Do you have work sessions?
Yes.
So of course, work session, can't give direction, can't make motions and decisions, but you can kind of direct, and having functional work session kind of relationships is a great way to move things along a lot faster. And it's definitely the best place to start workshopping those things to identify in your strategic plan, making sure that they show up down the road on the right work session. Do an executive session here in a little bit, so you know this one. One-on-one, we're going to talk about ex parte communication and what your requirements are in hearing. But this is a good place. As a staff person, really important for you guys to have interpersonal relationships with each other, because I think that's just part of being on a board together, is to know each other and be able to talk. Really difficult when it's overly business oriented. Even if you're not breaking any rules of sunshine laws, conversations that get advanced that need to be with this whole group, that get advanced with two folks talking, make your staff's life hard, and it makes it really difficult on other elected officials feeling kind of left out, left behind. So keep it kind of casual, and keep it more about kids and dogs and gossip and, you know, best shows that you've been watching, etc. So you all know this. I think it's pretty crystal clear for a board of this size what the laws are, what you can and cannot do. But of course, everything must be noticed. Public policy is absolutely public business, which is another reason I discourage kind of one-on-one discussion of public business, even though it's not any rules. You have the strongest chair ever, John. Dana's role is to just really help clarify. Mayors have a knack for just kind of taking the whole conversation and boiling it down into what needs to be a good takeaway, and especially effective with verbalizing what the staff or what the board wants to direct the manager with. You ensure stability, right? And she's the enforcer, so has to maintain control of the meeting. You guys have had a few gnarly meetings, but nothing too major. Long, yeah. So, I see some really clear kind of guidelines for what you do. My presentation is going to be more than 10 minutes. I apologize. Important that you guys, even late at night when you do not want to be here anymore, really acknowledge that your decisions are political and they are personal to somebody, particularly around planning, I mean, there's kind of nothing more important to me than my little house and its little, you know, boundaries, and that's my place in the world. So remembering that when you're making decisions, that maybe routine, maybe after a really long meeting, show extraordinary patience because these are issues that affect someone a lot, right? This is my favorite, to put some parts in my family. But I hear him being yelled at, people caring loudly at me. So again, be prepared, please be prepared. And back to that, not asking enough questions, I think that it is hard. It's hard to sit up here and be like, because you need your community to have trust that you guys have read your packet and all the right things are in the packet. You know exactly what you're going to do, and it's clear as day. And that is not always the case. And being able to just say, I don't know, I would really like to know X, Y, Z before I make this decision, and what's our timeline. So I'm not getting in the way of some important whatever progress being made, but being able to talk about that takes a little humility and good communication, but I think it's important. Don't ever take a vote of the audience. I don't know, we've always had that in our trainings. I don't know what happened back when. Just leave it in there in case it's showing bias before a decision is made is illegal in a public hearing setting or to affect someone's constitutional rights, but also poor form in any decision. Attempting to be the architect, do you guys know what this means? So, or the applicant or the engineer or whatever technical expert that you don't happen to be professionally. Dr. Green can give advice on this, right? If it's medical. She's authorized, but she cannot do engineering.
There's a degree in that too.
Oh my God. She's an exception. So, again, do I have enough information to make this decision? And have I actually asked enough people that are experts, and maybe your mayor's all of them. But do we have the appropriate engineer on this, and do we have enough information from them? Is our regular muni attorney sufficient for this, or is it more of like a water law situation? We need to get some specific expertise. So trying to just understand that you guys are faced with a zillion different decisions and you're not expected to have expertise in any of them, even if you have to. And your job really is to ask someone that knows and gather all that information and make sure that you're making the best decision with what you have. And I wanted to go sort of to part of that, improving meetings, and just part of really trying to, one mistake I make is not listening to people when they talk, because I am real nervous about if I'm going to respond correctly. So it's not always that you're just waiting for your turn to talk or wanting to hear the sound of your own voice. It's like what's the best way to craft what I'm going to say, and is it going to be the right thing, right response. So there's a lot of pressure on you guys to have a response in the middle of a meeting, and you don't need to. It's imperative that you are able to listen to what folks are saying and then take the time to formulate a response. And if you need to even table something, or, and this is particularly important when you get hit in public comment with something that isn't on your agenda, is unexpected, you shouldn't be really responding. You should be thanking someone for that and dealing with it at a later time, directing staff or whatever the appropriate response is. But important to take that minute, even if it's awkward, to kind of process what you've heard. Respond accordingly. I don't see you all much on social media, which is good. I know that Bill has a page. It's important for elected officials to rein that in if you are active. And a lot of times what I see elected officials doing is really being compelled on the Leadville bitch and moan, just kidding. on social media sites to jump in and try to defend your staff or set the record straight. And that can be a role that you designate carefully. There's a great mayor in Alamosa who things got really, he's a great communicator, and things got really haywire with unhoused folks and the conversations about what Alamosa was doing during COVID, and not having the resources to have like a whole communications department. The board did actually designate the mayor to say, hey, thanks for your feedback, here's my number, and kind of set up some boundaries for him. But for the most part, we don't really want our elected officials talking about whatever Leadville's issues are online. Leave it staff, develop a strong social media policy. Enabling commenting is a decision that you have to make, but keep it kind of neutral. So, I think this is out of order, but we can jump into when you guys are actually being asked to, make a decision that can affect someone's constitutional right, which is really kind of a big burden for, small community city council, but that really is what you are doing, particularly on individual land use decisions and liquor license decisions. Rely on your attorney to really help you point out when you are acting in a quasi-judicial capacity. So basically the 7 of you are acting as one judge and deciding something that affects an individual. So important to remember there that you are taking, you have a responsibility to say, this is when the public hearing is, and from the beginning of the public hearing, you have what's in your packet and what's presented at the public hearing, and you shouldn't be having any other information from that. You shouldn't be basing your decision on anything about that, because that way the applicant has the right to the exact same things that you do. So opinion or gut, really not something that's what we do a lot of legislative work with, right? Is how it's going to affect my community, and here's my opinion on it, but not so much when you're in quasi-judicial modes. Defensible procedures around public hearings, making sure it's perfectly noticed, otherwise you're putting yourself in a risky position for litigation. Everyone has an opportunity to be heard. Very clear rules. Make sure you know what your process is and follow it. Make sure your staff is enabling the findings of fact. So whatever written information, whatever is presented to you in person. Unbiased and timely decisions and complete records. So this is an area where it's imperative that you have enough information to make your decision. So you can't make progress without making decisions. It's very much your responsibility to tackle particularly the tough ones. Even if that means you may not get reelected, right? I think, I really think we should do this kind of like which army is it? The Israeli army, where you just have to do like a 2-year stint, like everyone in town has to do it. We might get some not great options, but your role is to be here for your term and make the decisions that are best for your community, even if it is maybe going to get you booted. And that's where your staff and your attorneys come for knowing what those decisions are, if they're hard. So part of that, these are way out of order, I'm so sorry, but that's kind of how my brain works though. So ex parte contact is when you are expected to act in a quasi-judicial manner in a public hearing. Anything that comes from anywhere else outside of that is considered ex parte contact. It's an area where you guys can get into hot water around if someone feels like the decision that was made is unfair or harms them their personal property right. So anything, any kind of way, and this is so hard in a small town, especially when it's a contentious issue or application. Any contact that seeks to influence or present information about that subject. So to preserve that due process, the board should ensure that the publicly interested parties, again, all have the opportunity for the exact same information. So again, you're at the grocery store and you're trying to buy your cereal. And someone attempts to contact you. Stop the person, just say, hey, would love to hear your opinion on this, but it's on the agenda for a public hearing. You're more than welcome to come present so that the rest of the board can be there. I cannot talk about it. Go talk to your staff about it if there's someone that's, if you have a neighbor who's been your bestie for 20 years and they will not shut up about it no matter what you say, start to get in touch with your staff and figure out. And it could, there's also kind of, I know too much about this, or I have just been, I've just had too much ex parte contact about this issue, and you can recuse yourself and leave the room. There's formal procedures that you can adopt that I think just, I think it helps a council just sort of check off the list and follow the rules a little bit easier. You can also kind of print card. There have little cheat sheets on that, kind of helpful if it's something that you're having an issue with. This is from Chaffey County. They kind of just put it out there so that citizens can even access why that might not be appropriate. So that's a thing. I'm gonna get the scenarios since we're getting close. But I can always come back later and we can dive deep into all these scenarios and all sorts of things. Conflict of interest when you're a member of a governing body, you have a personal or private interest in the matter proposed. Again, the best thing to do, and particularly, we all do 100 things in small towns, so you gotta just disclose. You can even say to the board, hey, this is my son's girlfriend's dad, it's a relationship, should I, whatever. If you do have a conflict, never be sure that you can decide not to vote on it and stay in the room. You can recuse yourself and step out of the room. It kind of depends on the situation. Talk to your fellow board members in a public meeting about what they feel comfortable with, because just so there won't be that appearance of impropriety, just be upfront. And again, never try to influence the votes of others. If your liquor license is on the line and you come sit over here to glare menacingly at your fellow board members, then you're not exactly recusing yourself. So this is kind of the CYA part of things. We have the Colorado Governmental Immunity Act that is protecting you guys when you're acting within the scope of your duties. There are some times that you lose your immunity and it has a lot to do with not acting within the scope of your duties. So back to all that quasi judicial stuff, prejudging a matter, engaging in ex parte can cause you to lose your protection, so that if someone has a personal property right that is harmed by your decision in some way and can make that case in court, and you're perceived to have prejudged something or have had ex parte contact that wasn't disclosed about it, that can, then you can be held personally liable for whatever happens in that lawsuit. Make a decision that clearly violates established something behind that picture. It's state or your own ordinances and laws. So of course, you'll lose your immunity if you make, bad decisions that are illegal. Acting beyond the scope of your authority. So that's another great one with the line between legislative board and your managerial staff. So acting beyond the scope of your authority can even be sort of casually suggesting that the public works crew clean up snow on your street first. Just being out of bounds in that way and not sticking to your role within this organization, is make you lose it. Listen to your attorney, even if they're wrong, that is their job, they're answerable for it. Always go with their legal advice. And then don't act outside the bounds of established procedures or ordinances, particularly your own. So again, you can't know everything. Your job is to gather information for good decision making. Again, take your time to do it and don't be afraid to hold off on something that feels rushed and get more information. Take care of yourself as much as you're taking care of your community. Don't forget about self-care. And that's it. Thanks for your commitment to Leadville.
Other questions for this week?
No, that's good.
That's very good.
Really appreciate it, Andy.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
You know, over the course of the next few years, whenever you have new board members or you just want a refresher, or if you're having a struggle around sort of any of these issues, like something like a big development, can kind of bring a lot of this up and into deep dive. I've also got, we also have some great sample policies if there's something you want to build on, like agenda management, who makes the decisions, if you want to go further with like a code of ethics that's specific to Leadville. So I'm already happy. Thanks so much for having me tonight.
Thank you so very
Thank
much.
you.
By the way, I would like to contact you about the code of ethics question.
Yeah, I have a great one.
Oh, great.
Yeah, do you have a minute for questions?
Oh, yes.
I did ask if there were
Sorry.
questions and
I thought you, wanted to ask one about, any actual knowledge about the income streams, potentially, like particular
Yeah.
dollar amounts.
I mean, I know that things are in flux and the legislative
time.
session is not yet complete. You know, I'm aware of a few efforts of the state to close their $1 billion+ gap.
Or 900 million or 1.5 billion.
Big.
Big.
I'm just wondering if you had any, any sense for what this would end up meaning for DOLA funding and specifically for the funding that local small communities rely on so heavily, like the AAIF.
In severance.
Yeah, well, that's the
Your
grants, the
direct
severance goes through
distributions are
that.
pretty big, aren't they?
For severance?
Yeah,
so-
severance FNL.
You know, severance has been quite interesting.
Yeah.
Because it has, you know, honestly, it consistently was around $70,000-$80,000. And then I think the first or second year that I was here, so that would have been 22 or 23, it jumped up to 230.
Because
And-
we had a crazy year. It's
Right.
so fun.
And then, of course, we knew that it was coming down last year, it did freedom last this year. So I would say our severance tax has been a little sleepy.
And I think there is discussion about cutting the portion of the direct distribution to local governments.
Oh, yeah.
At least that I read from the
They've
CML.
certainly discussed it,
Summary.
and they're also. Being recorded. Don't tell them I said that. I'm sure they watched it. They're talking about pulling, I think, 27 million for 2 years, which is the biggest hit we had.
Mhm.
Last year, we got hit by the former division director of local affairs, which is a shocker, to do $10 million, no, $15 million a year every 10 years for digital trunk radios, which is good emergency service led. We also got hit with a $4 million community nature-based learning schoolyard, something that's nice also. But it's really important to our team and our ethos to make sure that how we how we steward that money is according to what is most important to local governments and not what the legislature says is most important to local governments. Not that there's any disconnect there. But so those are obligations that our funds already have, at least for the $4 million was a one time. We're hoping not to see anything else like that. The other one was for 10 years of money that might be there. So the newest fiscal whatever bill note thing said, I think, and don't quote me on this, but it was roughly 27 million that was planned to be for like July 1st, whether or not we had the funds or not, I guess. And that got moved to maybe next July. But it's nowhere near over. So the answer is it sucks.
Yep.
But it's like I said, we've kind of definitely lost that sense that this is local government money, not state money.
Yeah.
And that's our most sincere belief, but I'm also not jealous of the folks that sit on the JDC and try to figure that out. Because Colorado's budget really has some severe structural problems that aren't going to be fixed with severance tax, but it's a quicker solution than the longer term one. So I don't know. And I really try to communicate with all my managers whenever I have news. And severance tax is projected to be like triple or quadruple what it was last year.
Maybe not so many ad
The amount of
valorem,
the cuts.
The revenue,
so maybe not so many ad valorem.
we have no idea, which is really frustrating. It's because of the proprietary nature. The record one that we got last a couple of years ago was like 125. It pretty much wiped out everything we had.
Yeah. Yeah.
So super volatile. And we try to balance that out with the federal mineral lease. And actually, when we give energy impact assistance awards, it can be a mixture between those two, depending on what we have. We almost always have more severance tax, but now things get tighter. We're actually FML, federal mineral lease revenue is way less volatile than severance. So I'm sorry, I can't
It's okay. I'm
tell you
done.
more.
I didn't expect you to have a crystal ball.
We haven't heard much about like kind of that one-time, one-off funding, like strong communities that's happening, which probably, I hope, wouldn't go over too well. New funding, since we're already in a pretty painful spot, but if those programs do happen, we will probably be handling them.
Thank
I'm happy to take any other question.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. You guys have a good night.
Thank you for coming.
Safe travels.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, I could just listen to Randy all day. Let's move on to our next, now we're getting into action items. We're gonna start with a public hearing on a certificate of appropriateness application. So, good evening. My name is Dana Green and I am the mayor of the city of Leadville. This evening, we have a public hearing before City Council. The hearing is to consider a certificate of appropriateness application by Michael Stesney of Headframe Design for construction of a single-family dwelling unit at 727 Maple Street. I'm going to go over our public hearing procedure, which we will follow. When the public hearing is opened, I will first attend to some preliminary housekeeping matters. I will then ask for staff to discuss highlights of the staff report. The council will then have the opportunity to ask questions of staff. Next, the applicant may give a brief presentation. Council will then have the opportunity to ask questions of the applicant. The public comment portion of the hearing will then be opened and members of the public will be invited to offer comment. I will close the public comment portion of the public hearing. And once the public comment portion of the hearing is closed, we will not accept further public comments. The council will deliberate, which may include further questioning of staff and or the applicant. And council will then render a decision, which could include a continuation of the hearing. These public hearings are quasi-judicial, as Randy so eloquently pointed out, which means that we have to follow certain procedural requirements to establish a record. For this reason, it is important that when you speak, you identify yourself and state your physical address. If you would like to submit written materials, please understand that the city will have to hold on to these materials for at least 30 days after city council renders its decision. Are there any questions about our public hearing procedure? Okay, seeing none, I will now open the public hearing for 727 Maple Street, Certificate of Appropriateness for construction of a single-family dwelling unit, applicant Michael Stesney of Headframe Design. At this time, I ask the city council members to disclose any ex parte communication or conflict of interest with the applicant.
I would like to disclose that a member of the public a couple of weeks ago suggested that I might have an appearance of a conflict of interest because of my husband's role on the Historic Preservation Commission. I don't believe I do have a conflict of interest. He doesn't have a decision-making role on that board. He's not the president of the board. And we don't discuss the projects at home. So I don't think I have a conflict. I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that.
We also all receive the Historic Preservation Committee's full report on their hearing as well. I would like to disclose that I know the applicant peripherally, as he is an alternate member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, where I'm an ex officio member. That's about as far as it goes. I just recognize him. That's it. I have not had any contact with him about this particular project. And that's it. So if council has strong feelings about whether or not I should recuse, I will absolutely entertain that. But otherwise, I think I can hear and render an unbiased decision.
And I will disclose, Michael and I are passing friends. I'm familiar with him being on planning and zoning. I've not had any conversations or any interest in this project. No previous information.
Welcome to a small town.
Exactly.
Okay. Is there anyone on council who has discomfort with any of those disclosures? Okay. Let's move on then. Staff, would you please present the report highlights?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For the record, I'm Jake LaShawn, Planning Director of the City of Leadville. So this proposal is to construct a single-family house within the historic district on vacant property. And there's a full staff report from the Historic Preservation Commission, or to the Historic Preservation Commission, including the packet as well as my cover memo. So I will cover the highlights. The site is vacant. It consists of 6 lots, originally platted in the 1800s. Pictures of the property are here on the screen. The applicant is proposing to construct a house on the easternmost 3 lots and leaving the remaining 3 lots practically vacant structures. The site is has a considerable slope on the property, which the HPC is considered. And just in terms of a short history of the property, staff has done some research here, and I will scroll down. But essentially, this area of town was vacant structures up until the 1900s. And then we started to see, around the turn of the century, we started to see this area be developed. This property, again, the northern 3 lots, the easternmost 3 lots, which are on the top of the screen, the red blocks there, always remained vacant, but most notably on the western part of the property, the westernmost 3 lots, the property hosted Leadville Monument Works, which is the business that made many of the headstones and gravestones in the Evergreen Cemetery. And of most significance, probably historically, is the Grapefruit Texas Jack. Right, so in terms of review history, the Historic Preservation Commission held a public hearing last week on this application. This application went straight to public hearing. The applicant did not opt for a work session with the HPC. Compliments to the applicant on preparing such a well-prepared design package and application. At the Historic Preservation Commission public hearing, the HPC evaluated the design criteria. So this type of project is subject to our residential infill design guidelines, which are essentially the rules if you're building new residential on a vacant property. That's what you're subject to. So this is under the realm of historic preservation, but really those design guidelines, if you boil that down to 2 words, the balance that those guidelines are trying to strike is compatibility with existing historic structures and the historic district as a whole, yet differentiation from existing historic structures. So in other words, you're not trying to replicate a historic structure. That's the goal. So there are 16 policies within the residential infill design guidelines that the HPC evaluated. The commission found that this application complied with all of them, with the exception of 3, which their recommendation to you tonight is that those 3 final policies are addressed with their recommended conditions of approval. So those 3 policies that they found exception to were regarding building orientation. So in other words, how the structure is perceived from the street, from a pedestrian, for example, and then also more details on doors and windows. Those were the 3 areas that they haven't discussed. So there are conditions of approval in your packet that the applicant has agreed to at the Historic Preservation Commission, and that is regarding the on the front entry, regarding the windows that are just on either side of the front entry, and those are shown here on the screen. And I will draw those so you can see those very clearly. So condition of approval that those essentially be reduced in their height so that they're a 2:1 ratio. The HPC also is suggesting a condition of approval that the windows on the northwest corner of the building be separated by at least a foot from the corner so that they are not connecting at the corner. And then finally, they're recommending a condition of approval that on the West 8th Street elevation, that's the north elevation, that a door be added here at this corner. So it doesn't have to be the primary entrance, but so that there is an entrance facing the street, which was traditionally found in Leadville, on the narrowest part of the building facing the street. So those are the 3 suggested conditions of approval. Those are outlined in your cover memo as conditions of approval 12, 13, and 14. With that, the HPC is recommending approval of this application with the findings and conditions that are included in your packet. There's a suggested motion on page 22 of your packet. I'd be happy to take questions. Thank you.
Other questions for staff?
I do.
Yes.
I just want to be clear, you stated that the applicant has already approved these conditions of approval.
Yes, and the mayor has a note procedurally tonight for the discussion to confirm that. Essentially, that was a preliminary confirmation we should on the record tonight prior to a motion, confirm with the applicant that they accept the conditions of approval. Otherwise, your charge is to evaluate the design as proposed.
Thank you.
Questions for staff? Okay, let's move on. The applicant would like to give a presentation to council.
Sure. You know, as Chapin has said, I did accept the conditions at the review at the hearing last week. I have since spoken with the property owner and discussed the conditions with him. He is agreeable to them as well. So, you know, we're ready to move forward. We think we're satisfied with the result of the hearing. I simply have a couple, maybe small comments or nits related to the recommendations that are here. I just want to make sure the language, I mean, we definitely agree in spirit. I just want to make sure that, if I could do that, just like, so item 12 here, it says with a small shed porch roof with brackets. I just want to confirm that a shed roof isn't exactly required, but a small gable roof would be acceptable as well.
Staff would support that, and I think that would align with the commission's intent.
Yeah, that wins the spirit of things. Thank you for that. And then, again, you know, Chapin said it differently than what is written here. And as far as the northwest corner windows go, just move away from the building corner by 1 foot. I think the spirit of it was at least 1 foot.
Correct.
I just don't, I mean, maybe it's a small bit, I don't want to tie this, brief, isn't there? But otherwise, yeah, thanks. Appreciate the thorough review and the approval.
Are there any questions for the applicant from council? Thank you very much. Okay, I will now open the public comment portion of this public hearing. Is there anyone in chambers who would like to give public comment on this application for conditional use, or excuse me, certificate of appropriateness? Seeing none. Is there anyone online who would like to give public comment on this application? And seeing none, I would entertain a motion to close the public comment portion of this public hearing.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, let's move on now to deliberations. Any other questions for either staff or the applicant? Any questions or concerns in terms of meeting the criteria for the COA?
I have one more quick question for staff. Just looking at the drawings, it's hard to tell where access is. Access to the parking in the rear of the house on the side garage from the alley or from a side street?
It is from Maple Street, to the alley. And so in other words, it's direct connection to the
So
alley.
it's access from the rear.
Yes, correct.
Other questions or comments? Anything to discuss? This is not particularly relative to our deliberations, but I would like to extend my gratitude to the staff of community planning and development. These historic rundowns of the property are, you know, for me, really add so much to trying to mark like how Leadville adapts and how Leadville changes with time. I mean, who knew that the gentleman who owned the Leadville Monument Works was also a popular master dancer?
Yeah.
Mayor, can I respond to that?
Yes.
Just a note of interest.
Yes.
Our staff member, Planner One, Alex Willis, does an excellent job, particularly in lieu of having cultural resource surveys for most of the properties in Leadville. We made some small progress, but we have a long ways to go. Every now and then you will see an application where we have a cultural resource survey and staff will not have to do that amount of research because we've already paid to have that done in the past, and we'll just reference that and attach it. For example, that was done with the DHI project that you said there. But in lieu of that, and we have to do more work than a lot of certified local governments do who already have survey projects, and we have to go one step further and actually do the historical research ourselves. So very fortunate to have a staff member who does such an excellent job of research.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
curious, does he go to the library? Like, where did you guys gather this information from? It's just amazing.
Multiple resources.
Okay.
Everything from our local library through state historical archives.
I mean, they really do make these kind of fun to look at. Like, it's amazing. I was thinking this morning.
I'd be happy to extend that to Alex.
So before we move forward, and I know Mr. Sesni, you've already answered this, but just for the record, do you agree with the conditions of approval that were forwarded by the Historic Preservation Committee?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Further deliberations, or is there interest to move on to a motion? Which is on page 22.
I can make the motion if we're done. It was definitely nice to have everything here and then hear that, yes, the conditions of approval are accepted, so.
I agree. I like that new addition. All right, Mitch, go for it.
I move to approve. No, it's right there. I move the city council approve the certificate of appropriateness for the Galena Hall. Is that what we're, okay. For the Galena Hall residential infill PL 2026-023 located at 727 Maple Street, along with the attached findings and conditions of approval, which I believe were listed as number 12, 13, and 14.
Edwards seconds.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gold,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Councilmember Grant,
Yes. Yes.
Councilmember Edwards,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Clark, and Mayor Green.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Chevy Powell just lifted up.
I know, I just, it felt that reverberate. Just, all right, let me continue to scroll down. Holy cow, there was so much good information in here. Let's move on to our second action item in that case. This is resolution number 15, series of 2026, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Leadville, Colorado, authorizing applications for grant funding, seeking financial support for the One Community Project Joint Comprehensive Plan underway with Lake County. Mr. LaChance.
Mayor and council, if you'd like to follow along, this is on page 99 of your packet. I know you have lots of scroll through from the previous item. Mayor and council, this resolution, if approved tonight, would authorize staff to submit a grant funding request to two foundations. We're very familiar with Freeport McElrath Foundation and El Pomar Foundation. El Pomar, for example, is also a foundation that has funded our cultural resource surveys for our Resource Preservation Commission. So two grant applications, both in the amount of $10,000 for a total of $20,000 that would support our joint comprehensive plan with Lake County, or One Community Project. Currently underway, coming here in a couple of months for adoption. That project, as you know, our partner on that is Community Builders, a 501c3 organization. They are eligible to receive grant funding, and they have been, and that is how they have reduced the cost of the project that would likely cost multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars down to a cost of $40,000 for an 18-month project for the city of Leadville. These two organizations, these two foundations have suggested their preference for the city of Leadville to be the direct applicant for a variety of reasons for these two grants. And so this is before you tonight so that we can essentially apply, receive these grants, which we have the initial indication that these are ready to be issued essentially tomorrow. And that we would then, we would come back to you, you're not authorizing this part of it right now, but we would then come back to you to your next meeting with an amended partnership agreement. So we would take that money that we're receiving from those grant funds, and then we would pay community builders. This is essentially our coordination with our partner on this project, since this project has extended from, was initially a 1-year timeline to an 18-month project, which is fine. Community builder, that was one of the reasons why we chose community builders, because they were so flexible in that regard, and they could bring in grant funding to reduce this cost. This is our way of partnering with them, so we can essentially be a pass-through of this funding. Formally, this is funding that we would receive, and then per an action item on your next agenda, we would revise the contract so we can pay community builders with it.
Sure. Questions on that?
There's
Not
no
terrible.
discussion in the fiscal impacts, Chapin, on how many hours of staff time will be required. Is the city staff themselves writing the grant application?
Thank you. I support the kind of updating our template. This matter came to us very, very recently, very quickly. So I have to turn this memo around very quickly. I would say, I would ballpark, I have about 5 to 10 hours in total on managing this part, not including the amended partnership agreement. Apologies for not having that to you in the updated format. We definitely tend to do that going forward. Since you have mentioned it, Councilmember Thomas, it is worth noting that in terms of fiscal impacts, that everything that we're talking about here is not in your 2026 budget, but it would have a net zero impact to your budget. Technically, for my department, it would increase our expenditures that are not budgeted, but it would also increase our revenue, which is not budgeted. So again, a net zero impact.
Other questions? Thank you for untangling that arrangement. If there are no further questions, I would entertain a motion.
I will. Veterans moves to approve resolution number 15, series of 2026, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Leadville, Colorado, authorizing applications for grant funding seeking financial support for the One Community Project, a joint comprehensive plan underway with Lake County.
3 seconds.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Councilmember Edwards,
Yes.
Councilmember Carey,
Yes.
Yes.
Councilmember Grant,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Clark, and Mayor Green.
Yes.
Why are you laughing?
It's really,
really
the
loud.
owl is right by me and it's
Oh.
very loud.
I
That
will,
is- That doesn't fall on you, Jim.
I'll respond quieter.
Okay. I know we have all the department report information in our packet. We are bumping that to kind of a combined department report next month. So I look forward to hearing all of that information then. At this point in our packet, we are moving on to an executive session. This is an executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024F to discuss the city administrator's performance as a personal matter, except that the city administrator may request that the discussion occur in an open meeting.
No request for that.
Okay, I'm gonna pick you, Rebecca. Is there a motion? You're council member number one. Is there
Yes, yes.
a Motion to go into
Yes.
executive session. Sorry, it's usually
Councilmember Thomas moves that we hold an executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024F to discuss the city administrator's performance as a personnel matter, except that the city administrator may request that the discussion occur in an open meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Carey,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Councilmember Grant,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Clark, Councilmember Edwards,
Yes.
Councilmember Dool,
Yes.
Mayor Green.
Yes. Let the record please show that this motion passed by a unanimous vote of the council members present. What I would like to do is take a quick break to allow us to go upstairs, get our virtual situation set up as Councilmember Grant and Mayor Pro Tem Tharp will be joining us virtually, and I need to text Mayor Pro Tem Tharp and let him know that we are ready. So meet you up there, ready to go in 5 minutes.
You good?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Can't spell convening.
I was up. My memory is.
So sorry.
Years ago, May.
Are you going there or?
She's gonna come get me in a minute, I think.
Yes, but eating all the food, still eat. Used to just eat the whole bowl. Some feeding the foreign remains in the night. So we're having like 3 or 4 feeding sessions. The other 3 dogs I didn't have any problem. I didn't have any problem with eating meat. Sorry to the dog.
Actually, I have no idea. I'm judging our family dog. The most recent one that I took care of the most was a Chihuahua. I think she was like 14 or 15. But they're small.
No, that's what happened with the other 3. The Beagle, Japanese, and Scotty Bug, I got them all within 2 years. Beagle was 14 months old, the other 2 were 10 months old. They all went within 2 years. I'm not sure if they were 14 or 15. You said you were what? How old you said? Yeah, that's good, dog.
Yeah, she's sweet. She was really cute. Brown Chihuahua. Yeah. I didn't get to name her. So my little brother named her. And it was up there. She was a boy. Or she was I got a lizard. And I got to name my lizard. They called it Lizzie. So they were afraid I was going to call the dog Doggy.
How old were you when this one was finished?
It's like 3rd grade, 4th grade.
Oh, okay.
The lizard would have been like 1st grade, 2nd grade.
You were like, what do you do? We wish I had.
Yeah.
And I was like, no,
I'm pretty sure we could just run a podcast and everyone watch it.
there's no disconnect that thing. At least that's what they did the last time. She came back, shut it down.
Yeah, that last one was crazy. It's like, it got over at like 11:35 or something.
Yeah, it was about 2 hours or so.
I'm curious if this is the same issue that you said. Yeah.
Mr. Edwards, voiced to me at one time, and we were still communicating on personal. He did. Citizen neutral. Whatever it was he said, he wasn't happy with it. He's very forceful.
We get to just hold a podcast while y'all are gone.
I think you should not be.
We cut everything out last time. You guys turned all that off.
I mean, I'm happy though. It's out of sports.